Welcome to Performance Under Pressure. My name is Terry Lyles. I have a special guest with me today, James Hinchcliffe, IndyCar driver, friend, colleague. Guy's done some amazing things. He's from Toronto, as my wife is, so I have to hear that on a regular basis. But it's all good. I love Toronto as well. So James, it's great to have you on the show today. My book is called Performance Under Pressure, so that's what we talk about. So I talk about you in corporate America daily, so I just wanted to kind of get your side of the story on some things. So great to have you here today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real honor.
Sure. So I started working with you early on in 2015, maybe late 2014, but we were testing out some biometric testing and things were going well. We were able to watch your body movement in the car, which was really fascinating to people to see what's happening inside of a race car driver's body. As you remember, some folks have said in years past, race car drivers aren't athletes, which we always laughed about. All of us have. And, you know, biometrics have been able to prove that differently. So 2015 was an interesting year for you. We got to Indy, you know, you were doing well, and then you had an incident. So talk about that just for a moment and we'll dialogue.
Sure. So, like you said, 2015, we were practicing for the Indy 500. It was the Monday after qualifying, kind of our last main practice day before the race. And I had a mechanical failure in the car when I was going around a corner at about 225 miles an hour, 230 miles an hour. And it speared me off into the wall, which, you know, that's a bad day on a good day. But
Right.
On a particularly bad day, a very freak set of circumstances led to part of the suspension of the car actually piercing the cockpit and the safety cell that we sit in, and essentially went straight through the lower part of my body. And for all intents and purposes, I was shish kebabbed by a piece of suspension. And the real danger in it all was that it severed the femoral artery in my left leg, and I was bleeding to death right there on the racetrack. And it took some very heads up thinking and some miraculous work by the safety workers at the track and the doctors from IU Methodist here in Indianapolis that managed to keep me alive in the moment, get me to the hospital, get me in the OR, and get me stitched up. But that was just kind of day one on what ended up being a bit of a lengthy recovery process.
Sure. Yeah, I know it was, I was standing in the pits and, you know, you were wearing the strap and, you know, when that accident happened, we were all just like gasping because in most cases, I mean, you guys hit the wall, not often, but enough to know that most cases you just get out and walk away. That was just not one of those days. And to our dismay, as we were running over to the medical side of the unit, you were already gone in a helicopter and, you know, they were saving your life. So, you know, thank God for those doctors that were able to do that for you. So the recovery process, I mean, it took the rest of that year pretty much to recover. And I remember learning some things about like your nutritional consumption. You know, we began to realize through your earlier runnings that you were burning about 2,200 calories during a race. And you were typically eating about 25, a little more than that, you know, a day. And we began to put some numbers together and go like, look, you don't have enough energy. I mean, you're burning more than you really have in reserve. So to be able to up that caloric intake and to balance that out became a big part of, you know, the recovery as far as the energy level. Because I mean, you lost weight, you had to come back and train again, get strong again. So that was a great recovery on your part.
Yeah, no, it was interesting kind of having a little bit of that knowledge base before the accident with the work that we've been doing together and, you know, understanding, like you said, a lot of people don't look at race car drivers as athletes. We know that's not true, but we
Sure.
haven't had the benefit of, you know, teams of doctors and trainers working with us the way that, say, a football team does or a
Right.
hockey team or, you know, these other kind of pro sports. And so the work that we were doing was, you know, some kind of groundbreaking stuff in a lot of ways and teaching us a lot. And then after my accident and you started going into the recovery side of things, you know, talking to the doctors and the nutritionists at the hospital, there were some very specific foods and some very specific dietary things I had to follow for a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
Part of that was just really geared towards helping the body recover. Some of it was a little more specific as part of my recovery was I actually had to have a colostomy for 3 months. And so that affected part of how my diet worked. So yeah, it was kind of fascinating to learn that side of it and having had that, like I said, that little bit of a knowledge base going into it from the work that we've been doing.
Sure. And then, you know, you come back and then you do Dancing with the Stars, you know, and I remember telling my wife, I go, look, we were rooting for you. Obviously, we think you won, but you came in second to Dancing with the Stars in 16. And, You know, it was like, look, whatever they did to him in the surgery, they gave him some dance chip because I mean he's doing really well. So that was a great experience for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I used to joke. So during the accident, I had to have 22 units of blood, put into me to kind of keep me going. My body only holds 11, so
Right.
I joke that I had two full oil changes, and then they must have put some dancer's blood in me at some
They
point during
did.
that because from a 5'10" guy from Canada, from Toronto, this was the extent of my dancing before I went on the show.
That's great.
But no, it was a really cool experience because, like you said, I mean, a year prior, I was laid up in hospital, and we went from being out of a race car for about 4 months was kind of the recovery period. It was originally supposed to be about 6, and because I listened to my doctors, which most athletes don't do, we
Right.
historically make the worst patients. But I did my best to listen to the doctors because I wanted to get back as quickly as possible. I was back in the car in 4 months. And
Right.
then, 6 months after that, we were on a ballroom dance floor competing in front of, 12 million people every Monday night, which a little bit terrifying, Doc. I'm not gonna lie to
Sure.
you.
It was a new kind of performing under pressure, but you did such a great job. I think that's part of your willingness, and obviously I think one of the coolest recoveries is you come back in 2016 back to Indy, the place you crashed a year before, horrific accident. They saved your life, and you won the pole that year. You were the fastest car on the track for the month of May in 2016. I mean, if that's not a cha-ching, the only better one would have been if you'd have won. But you gave it a good shot. You led that race. I mean, you had a great day in 2016 at Indy.
Yeah, we really did. I mean, one of the things that's important to remember, another misconception about racing is that it's an individual sport, but
Right.
racing is really a team sport, probably the
Sure.
epitome of a team sport because my life is in the hands of the mechanics that build my car and the engineers that set it up and the mechanics that come over the wall. Their lives are in my hands when I come into the pits to not run them down,
Right.
so there's a
Exactly.
massive trust, factor and huge stakes on the line. So it really is a huge team sport. And while I was the one that was in the car and I was the one, that was in hospital, we all went through that as a team together. We're one big
Sure.
family. And for a year, that's all anybody wanted to talk about. And so
Mhm.
before we got back to the speedway, there was a lot of questions like, hey, is he going to be up for it? Is he going to be reserved? Is he going to be able to do it the way he used to do it? And I sat down with my boys before we got there and I said, look, man, I've got one goal for this month, and that's to leave Indy with a new story to tell. Because for the last 12 months, we've been telling the same
Right.
story, and I'm sick of that story. Let's go make a better story to tell.
Right.
And we went out in the GP, which the race we hold on the
Sure.
infield before the 500, and we finished on the podium, which was great. And then, like you said, we go out for qualifying, which is one of the most special parts of the whole Indy 500 experience. That 4-lap run that you have to do, just laying it all on the line. And by one of the smallest of margins, we managed to
Mhm.
be the quickest and start the 100th running from pole, which was just it was such a comeback for the whole group of guys and a huge point of pride for all of us and a little bit of an exclamation mark to say, yeah, no, we're back and we can still do this just like we did before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, a lot of people don't understand if they don't really follow racing, but the qualification is like a race itself. It is the race to be the fastest car because then you change the car setup to actually run the actual race. So you won that qualification race. I thought, what a bookend, like you said, your story, you wanted to change the narrative a bit to not just be about a crash. And that's what I try to share in corporate America is when I'm talking to people about performance under pressure, it's performance is measured in the speed of recovery. How quickly can you get back to where you were or better when something like that happens to you? And you're a great testimony to that. So really appreciate your career, what you've done. And you got a great career broadcasting. So your second act, whenever you choose to finish racing years down the road, I'm sure you do a great job, broadcasting as well. So you're a very talented person. And, recovery is one of those things that's huge. But, just the best to you, man, for everything that you do. How do people follow you? I mean, I know about Hinchtown, but just give a shout out to how people really follow you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, first of all, and yeah, basically all social media. I'm at Hinchtown. My hinchtown.com is the website, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's all under the same thing there. And yeah, we try to have some fun with it. I enjoy having the kind of access to fans that social media allows us. It's kind of a cool time to be, you know, in the sport in that sense. And I love engaging with people that love
Sure.
following the sport.
Yeah, you're actually the mayor of your own town, which is kind of cool, you know, virtually. So it's you're the mayor of Hinchtown, and you know you were ahead of the curve of a lot of people trying to do social media and figuring it out. So you know, hats off to you, man. You were ahead of that.
Yeah, no, we had some fun with it. You know, it was kind of a fluke, the whole Hinchtown thing, how it started. We weren't really sure what we were doing, but you know, it didn't take only a couple of years before I was getting introduced as the mayor of Hinchtown more often than I was James Hinchcliffe. So I
Right.
guess it worked.
Hey, it's all good. James, thank you for being on the program today. Really appreciate, you know, your life, career, and courageousness, and hope you have a great ending of a season, and look forward to talking to you and seeing you do great things in the future.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for all your help along the way. I really appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir. Thank you, James. Take care.